Hello and welcome back to my channel, Checks Captures Threats. Today's episode 67 of the Chess Guide, will be going over handling pressure. So, this time we're going to be kind of really just talking about how to do this, as it's going to be quite difficult showing you game. I will play a game out here, just the reason when I play in the rapid increase. Now, it was a very short game of how he blundered his queen, but I just want to go how we can keep, making us not lose a queen, for example, as it's very easy, as I can go through. I'll be talking about a tournament of how I played and how it's sometimes quite difficult to handle pressure. So, how can we handle pressure? Let's just go straight away into the core of it. So, pressure, how we're causing it is, most of the time you'll be in a tournament, whether it's online across the board, and you'll have a point in time where you're playing for something big. Now, this might be your first game back from like a few years. For example, that's what I had when I first started in round 1 of my chess tournament that I played in. That I was playing against someone who I had a better grade than. It was lucky pairing, you could say, as in I was like, quite a bit better, as sometimes the pairings go from top to bottom. So I was in the middle of like the ratings and this guy was right at the bottom, so he was quite the underdog. But I still had that pressure because I didn't know. I hadn't been back to the circuit for so long. I didn't know whether, maybe these guys just haven't played as well. Maybe he's as good as me. But, I was quite literally shaking some parts. I was scared I was going to play the wrong moves, scared I was going to forget all my opening preparation and everything. But in the end, I was able to win quite clearly and easily, just because I just focused, didn't think about anything around me, and just thought about all the moves they're playing and just think as if I'm playing someone I know or something like that. Now, the main ways here we can handle pressure, obviously, the reasons we're going to be creating pressure, that's one example. But another example is that at the start of the game, you're fine, but then you're winning and now you're overthinking. That's the big thing here, is that pressure comes from, a whole lot of other things that's going on around you. So you could be, trying to, you're a knight up, and then now you've got to make sure you can convert that. So, for example, in this position, as we're going to just play through here, the French defence, this is where I'm fine throughout all of this. This was a little bit different. This put me a little bit out of my preparation, so I was like, that's fine. But then here, they blundered their queen. I was very silly from them, and obviously they resigned lately after. But if we think about this, imagine, this is like a game here you're playing at a top level. Maybe you don't win a queen, let's say you win a knight, for example, but you've got to try and make sure you convert it. Now, how can we do that? By handling the pressure that we've got. Swap everything off. It's as simple as that. When you have pressure here, make moves that you are knowing that aren't going to, force mistakes or anything. So as long as that's like defensive moves, we're so much up there. If we just defend their, attacks, we're fine. We've got that extra piece to do the business. So, for example, let's say we was an extra bishop up. What we would do is we'd use this knight, both of these rooks, and the queen here to protect this king right here. But we'd get this bishop here to do some of the core work here onto their pawn. So attack this pawn, for example, this pawn, attack the rooks, attack anything they possibly can here. And it will force, their pieces will start dropping down. We can slowly stop defending and we start attacking with other pieces. That's just one example. So, handling pressure, it's quite the difficult thing as well. One time you think you've handled it, the next game you play, trying to do the same thing, you do it all wrong and everything goes wrong. It's just practice, trial and error. If you go to your first ever tournament, for example, you've learned from a Levy Rosman video, hopefully maybe this video of my playlist, and you're like, I'm going to go into a tournament. But then you see all of these, women FIDE Masters maybe in the Opens, or like, even if you're going in like a under 1500s, for example, and you see people at like 1490, you start to feel the pressure. You'd obviously start to feel like, maybe I don't belong in this category and that. Don't immediately like underestimate yourself. Immediately, or overestimate, or whatever. But just don't, just think of it blindly. Don't expect a good result. Don't expect a bad result. Just play how you need to play. And as long as you think checks, captures, threats throughout some of the main moves, you just think vividly about it, remembering your time. You don't want that to run down, because that's also another way we'll be talking about it as well. But you've just got to make sure it doesn't all build up. So now let's go on to the time part of it. So time is quite the big thing. We've done it for the last few episodes before. We did talk about it. But most of the time, if you're able to keep on top of it, just keep looking at your time, manage it well. Remembering that the opening, you don't want to spend too long. The middle game is the big part, and the end game, it's kind of a free-for-all. Hopefully, you've just left enough time for it. But if you're running low on time, and you're feeling the pressure, you don't know what to do, don't play forcing moves for them. Because if I'm saying this, if you play a check, for example, here of some sort, and they immediately know they have to block, now you're thinking again, and you're wasting another minute off the clock, and that's a valuable minute again that you might not know what to do, for example. So you've really got to think about how to manage everything. Now, don't get me wrong, there's so many things to manage. You might, get a bit crazed by all of everything going on. Try to just separate one by one. So think about the opening. After every move, look at your clock, see what you've done there, and then think about what you're going to do next in their time, and just play like that. If you're a piece up, just stay calm. You can even, have an extra minute or two less than them, and, that could just be, prepping yourself for what's going to happen, and, it'll be all fine. It's just taking some logical, understanding of it all, and trying to, take that further on. So that's really it for today's video. We'll just quickly clarify everything I mean, just if I was talking a bit of so many things, just try and put it all into a summary here. Just to summarize, handling pressure, it's very difficult to do straight away. You'll get the hang of it after a few times. You obviously have experiences of stuff like this, but just there's many ways to handle pressure, like time, being a piece up, don't know what to do, overthinking everything. Just slow down, take maybe an extra minute if you can, take maybe even an extra 10, 15, 30 seconds even, just to think about your position, think about the time you've got left, and if you're struggling, maybe, for example, write moves down, because obviously you have to do that sometimes now in tournaments, just, it doesn't matter. If you get to a point where you're like 3 minutes left on the clock, you can stop. You don't have to keep writing and then run out of time and everything like that. So that is it for today's episode. A little bit shorter again, but we're just going over how to handle pressure here. And now, hopefully, by the end of this episode hopefully you've understood that when you're going into a game of some higher standard, maybe, that is, a bit more challenging than just playing a 10-minute game like I am right now. If I was playing a 10-minute game against an FM, a Grandmaster, something like that, rhetorically here, then, I'm going to be having to handle my pressure. Every time I do a video on the rapid increase, I'm just having to make sure I don't make some silly blunders, as I have done already, and, I've got to share that. So, anyway, hopefully you've enjoyed today's video, so thank you, and bye-bye.